You're listening to the Youth for Life podcast with Michelle Bauman, Director of Why for Life at Lutherans for Life, where we prepare youth to be gospel-motivated voices for life. Be sure to stick around after today's live recording of our Chats for Life program to find out how you can be live too on our next Youth for Life podcast. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Youth for Life podcast. It is so exciting that you have joined us. We are so glad that you're here. Today we're going to take a look at how we uphold life through the vocation of DCE, or Director of Christian Education. Before we hop into what a DCE is and what a DCE does, we want to start this podcast off, as we always do, with prayer. So please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to gather together to talk about the wonderful vocation of Director of Christian Education and the wonderful ways that you work through DCEs to uphold life. Lord, be with us this day as our guests are on and we'll have a chance to share the many ways that they interact with others, the ways that they affirm their lives, and in the many ways that they serve uniquely. Lord, calm their nerves and be with our listeners that they also might learn a great deal, not only about Director of Christian Education, but also how they might uphold lives in their own vocations. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right, I am so excited to invite both of you and to welcome both of you to the podcast. You guys, I've known you in different ways throughout my life, and I really appreciate the things that you do and the gifts you bring to the table. So with us today, we have Mackenzie and Matt, and they're going to give us their full names, and they're going to tell us a little bit about where they work, where they serve, and how long they've been doing so. So, Matt, I'm going to have you start us off, and then when you're done, we'll hear from Mackenzie.
Like Michelle said, my name is Matt Nieman. I have been working at Emmanuel Lutheran Church as their DCE for 30 years. Started in 1996. I'm not really sure if everyone listening is understanding of what DCE ministry is, but my primary role is working with the 6th through college age students and young adults in spiritual and social and all kinds of different ways, as well as teaching at the school and helping with the preschool and kindergarten that we have as well.
You have, can you mention how large is your school, Matt?
Oh yeah. We have about 400 students in the K through 8th grade part. And then I'm not sure how many we have in the preschool and the childcare that's also housed here in the school and church. But I would estimate probably around 500 total. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And thank you for clarifying. We're going to talk a little bit more about what a DCE does and what it define it, because it's a good question. I often, when I travel, I mention, when people get to know me, I mention my dad was a DCE, and sometimes, well, very often there's this kind of quizzical look. What is that? Right. So we'll attack that in just a minute. All right, Mackenzie.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Christmas. I am a DCE at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Valparaiso, Indiana. Yeah, I know, both Emmanuels. Is yours Emmanuel with an I or with an E? Very important.
German spelling with the I.
Okay, I've got the I too. Perfect. We're on the same page. I have been here for going on 3 years now. This was my internship church, and they called me after my internship, and so it's the only church I've been a DCE at.
Yeah.
And I work with all ages of our youth and our parents. So all the way from the little newborn babies, I help with the preparing them for baptism, and up through college, and then also supporting our parents in that role.
And how large is your congregation?
That's a great question. We probably worship about 400 on a Sunday. We have a school attached as well, and we have about 230 students in our school, I believe, with another 60 or so in the preschool. And our school is K-8.
Excellent. So that's, I think, a commonality when you find DCEs and DCE calls. They're often in situations where there are lots of youth or children, right? So let's jump into what does a DCE do? Well, first of all, like what is a DCE? When we talk about Director of Christian Education outside of Lutheran circles, there's a lot less clarity. But even in Lutheran circles, I think there is some lack of clarity as to what a DCE is and what a DCE does. So, who wants to tackle what a DCE is? And in that, could you tell us a little bit about the training or preparation that you received in order to be a DCE?
I most recently have been trained, so I'm happy to start here. So I went to Concordia University, Chicago, and the training for DCE includes 4 years of your traditional undergrad education and then a 1 year internship. So I did that. My internship was here in Valpo. And the training is a lot of theology, a lot of education, and then a lot of specifics to church leadership, I think, also. I would say that DCEs can do a lot of things, and that each DCE does probably something different than every other DCE, depending on your congregation's needs. So even though I was trained to support all ages from, we like to say from womb to tomb, so really supporting the entire congregation, I mostly focus on our children, youth, and their families. But I know other DCEs who work a lot with adults or older people. So there's a big wide range of what we can do. And I think there's a wide range of what we actually do also.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything that you want to add to that, Matt?
I we are an accessory to the pastors is kind of how I always think about it. Um, we can define our role. Like my role is basically sixth grade through college age, and then I work a little bit with the younger ones, like I already said. But I will also do the things the pastors need me to do, whether it's the children's message or visiting the shut-ins or going to the nursing home, making hospital calls, things like that. We are at the disposal of really whatever the ministry needs of the congregation is, and that can be a lot of different things, so I can see why people are a little confused as to what we actually do.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree. And no 2 days are ever the
Yeah.
same.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
Let's
my
talk
favorite
about that.
question, yeah, one of my
Yeah.
favorite questions is what is the average day in the
Yes.
life of a DCE? And there's no good answer because it's always different.
Yeah.
So what sort of things do you do then?
I personally, in a typical week, I guess we could say, I do a lot of preparation for and then teaching of Sunday school, confirmation, Bible studies, youth group. I go in the classroom sometimes and do the religion classes, or even just being like a guest in the classroom. I go on a lot of our school's field trips, our mission trips. Um, I do children's messages on occasion. I uh, honestly a lot of relational work, right? So it doesn't seem like it, but just going and eating lunch with our school kids is a big part of my job and just getting to know them and what's going on in their lives. And similarly, when we have parents in the building for school chapel or whatever, just going and talking to them and seeing what's going on and being a familiar face and connecting with them and also seeing what things that their family is struggling with and could use the church's support on, and relaying that to the pastors and also helping provide that support in a number of different ways. And I also am always getting ready for the next big thing. So a lot of our annual events like Vacation Bible School or our Easter walkthrough, and new events all the time. We're always trying new things. And so putting those activities together as well.
How
Yeah,
about
that
you,
was
Matt?
no, that was a great answer. I would just kind of tag along with that one and saying at our church, we've got a really big congregation and a really big school. And very often there's an us and them kind of mentality. And I think the DCE ministry is that little tiny bridge between the two. The pastors do go over there and that's great. But a lot of times in a more social, like you were saying, Mackenzie, about the social things, about eating lunch with them and being that kind of liaison, if you would, between
Yes.
the church and school. So it's not an us and them, it's an us total.
Right. Right. I love that concept of relational work, right? Like I said, my dad was a DCE growing up, and so I got to see that firsthand. Some of the things that are really cool, like you get paid to eat lunch with people and talk to them, right? Get paid to visit them, get paid to spend time with them and go on outings with them, right? So these are wonderful relational opportunities. But it's through relationships that and you kind of touched on this, Mackenzie, that you get to know people and get to know what their needs are, right? And share those needs with a pastor, if that's pastoral care, and maybe share with others, like if there is a need in the home for extra babysitting, or someone is sick in the family, those sorts of things. So when we talk about like needs people face, we're really often talking about life issues. And so DCEs are uniquely able to uphold life in ways that people from other vocations maybe can't, because they perhaps they don't even know about the need, right? So what are some unique ways that DCEs are able to uphold life? When you think about your job as a whole, how are life issues introduced to you, and how are you able to affirm and uphold life differently from a pastor or from a teacher or from a parent? Go ahead, Matt.
From my
Yeah.
perspective, it's what Mackenzie was saying earlier with the relational things, and not to say the pastors don't get to know their congregations, but I think there's a different way of getting to know someone when you're preaching and teaching and comforting and counseling with them, and when you go and you build a church or ride a roller coaster or go through some scary experiences with them. So a lot of times there's less of a social barrier between the people that we sometimes come into contact with as compared to the pastors. And so they will talk to, you're experiencing this too, I'm sure, Mackenzie, they'll talk to us sometimes about things that they might not talk to someone
Mhm.
who is what they would see as wearing the collar and kind of more official.
Yeah.
It gives us a little bit more of an open door to talk to people about things that maybe they might not be comfortable enough talking to the guy in charge they see every Sunday morning in the pulpit. And that is not to diminish any way the pastoral ministry. It's a different kind of connection that we are able to have with people of all ages, from, like you said, womb to tomb, that we can then use to encourage them when it comes to the big decisions or even the small decisions that encourage life. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, similar to how the role of a DCE is different than a pastor, no, definitely no greater than, but we just have a different relationship with
Yeah,
these students.
absolutely.
We also have a different relationship with these students than their parents do. And I mean, research has shown that students who stay in the faith through adulthood have at least one or two people in the church aside from their parents who they can connect with and feel comfortable talking to. And a lot of times that's us, because we've spent time with them from, when they were little in Sunday school through youth group, and we've gone on mission trips and we've shared some really valuable memories together, and we've done a lot of really great things together. And we've also talked about the boring stuff, the ordinary stuff that happens in their day-to-day life. Um, I think also, like pastors, a lot of times there's just so many congregants, right? Like there's no way they can know everything about all of them all the time. And so, like me, I'm uniquely positioned to know more about my students because I have a select group of people in the congregation that I'm so focused on. Um, but pastors do interact with our kids. I feel like a lot of times it's often maybe the kids are really struggling or their families are really struggling, and that's where pastors step in a lot too. And they are much more equipped to do that than I am in many different ways. But the fact that I get to work with them in the ordinary moments, I think makes a big difference too, and it really helps build that relationship. And once we have that relationship built, that's when students actually care about what we have to say too, and they want to know how being a Christian is different and how that affects their life. But yeah, you can't do ministry without relationship first. And so having that relationship is very important. And I think we're uniquely situated to build those relationships with our students.
Yeah, I would completely agree. You have some wonderful gifts. Most DCEs have wonderful gifts in that way, right? They love people, right? And when I think about, your role as a DCE and the types of life issues that you might encounter, I'm sure that you've had some instances when there's been a really tough thing, right? A really tough circumstance that you've had to, or that you've been privileged to be a part of, right? To really lean in and to uphold lives. And maybe you've been able to see through that hardship how God has transformed something for good for the individual, for the family. I wonder if you could share with us any experience you might have had, or just in general, um, how you see God at work in the lives of the people that you serve.
I could start. I think I think that I'm very young and I've not been doing this very long. And so I definitely expect for there to be lots of these moments in my future. But I would say so far I don't feel like I've seen a ton of them. Um, I know that in my own personal life, when I was a youth and even when I was in college, I went through a really hard time with like mental health. Um, and God really blessed me with great resources and great people to support me in that time and help me through that. And I have been able to then share my knowledge and resources with my students and their families. And I think that's been really helpful. And I think that that's another way that I'm uniquely situated to uphold life is just because of my experience in that area, and because of this job where I am around youth so much who are going through these things. And so that's really cool. But I look forward to also seeing more ways where God is using these difficult experiences for the good of others in my students' lives as well.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Mackenzie, that sometimes it's not sometimes it's not just about being part of someone else's situation, but it's also pulling from the ways that God has healed us, right?
Mhm.
Has upheld our lives through others. You mentioned earlier about relationships and the ability to be in their lives, but really some of those relationships they're more than friendships, they're mentorships, right?
Sure. Yeah.
While there might be things that you would do that they would do with their friends, right? So some of the fun things in the youth room, and yet you're also apart from them, right? You're not just a friend, you are a mentor. And so you get a chance to bring into to their lives the things you've learned and the blessings that you've received. And I think mental health is a great example. When we look at today's youth, that is one of the number one life issues that today's youth are facing. Mental health strife. It comes in many forms, but still, that overarching umbrella is one that what a blessing that you can pull from that and share that message of hope, the
Mhm.
same hope that God gave you and was able to provide healing for. How about you, Matt? You've been in it longer, right?
Yeah.
What sort of life issues typically would you encounter, or could you give an example of how God worked through you, through the DCE ministry to uphold life?
Well, I'll be honest. I'm always shocked and humbled if anyone wants have anything to do with me, frankly, because we work in the church and this is what God called us to do. So when I get asked to be in a wedding or be in a baptism or heaven help us, help with the funeral, it's always such a blessing. And because I've been doing this so long, there was one instance that immediately came to mind when this question came up. Had a family that was actively involved and then the mother died, and within 5 months the father, who couldn't function on his own, got married again, which is not good for the kids, and it eventually ended up with the son being in jail and juvenile, and I actually ended up fostering him for a year, because the dad was at wit's end and he was like, I don't know what else to do, can you take him? And so I did. I had was the father of a 15-year-old for an entire year, which is, yeah, crazy. um, but after a year, after the father had worked on himself, gone through counseling, was able to take him back, which was nice, hard but nice. And I still am in contact with this young man, who I will not say how old he is now because that makes me sound ancient. But this young man also has a daughter who, now, he had in difficult situations with a young lady who was into substances that she shouldn't. And so there were lots of choices that had to be made when that happened. And I was on my way to a camping trip in West Virginia when he called me and told me that the girl he was seeing was with child. And so that's the first one that came to mind when you mentioned that, is that we talked a lot through that. And now he is relatively successful father to a fourth grade girl. So it's been nice to see the progression of him and her and all of that, and just think back to all way back when he was 15 and living in my guest room, for heaven's sake. Oh, geez.
Yeah. What a great story of God's goodness, right? And his triumph over the brokenness that we experience, the brokenness that the world experiences. Yeah, I think the longer you're in ministry, whatever ministry that might be, right, as a DCE or as a called teacher or a pastor, and we've talked about deaconess, other church workers, the more you get to see God's goodness, right, over time. Sometimes we immediately are kind of shocked by the devastation that happens, like in death or in divorce, or there's a wide variety of life issues that youth face that we think, man, how can God make this good? And yet he can transform. So that was a great example of a joy that came from hardship, joy that came even with difficult times. What other joys do you have as a DCE? Like in particular, your work as a DCE, what joys can you kind of count on, right? Like this is part of being a DCE.
Oh, there are so many. It's hard to start with
Yeah.
any one. I do have one on the top of my head because it just happened. Uh, our Easter Vigil service is at 5 in the morning, which is a brutal service to wake up for, but it's one of my favorites. Not only because our confirmation students help, they read and they light candles and they do a really phenomenal job, but also because we have baptisms that morning, and Emmanuel Valpo has this really gorgeous baptismal font that can actually open up into a pool. And so we do full immersion baptisms on Easter morning, and we had 13 full immersion baptisms on Easter morning, and I think 12 of them were like youth, children or teenagers. And so two of my students who I work with very, very closely were baptized on Easter morning. And the same thing happened last year and the year before that. And so I think one of the great joys is and this happened for me too. A friend invited me to youth group when I was in high school, and so I started coming, but I really didn't think much of it or care much about it until I did, and until it really changed my life. And that's what's happening with these students. They're getting invited to youth group, and it just seems like fun and games. But then, a year or two later, they go, "Hey, this means something, and I can tell that something is different, and my life is better when I am in this place with these people doing these things." And they get baptized, and oh my goodness, you guys, I cried like a baby. It was just such a beautiful moment, and I really enjoyed it. And there are hundreds of other examples I could give you every week of little or big joys that happen in the ministry, but I think really seeing how what we do makes a big difference, an eternal difference in the lives of these kids. That's everything.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
What
that's
about
awesome.
what about you, Matt? What would you
Yeah,
say?
I honestly very similar. We had a couple of young ladies who started attending youth group, and they decided that they really dug it, and they stuck around, and now they're going through the adult education class here. And they had previously been baptized at another congregation that they weren't regular at, but now they're joining our congregation. But honestly, for me, and maybe I'm just too proud, it's the tiny little daily ego boosts of like the kindergartners and the preschoolers yelling and coming over and hugging me and knowing my name. I don't even correct them when they call me Pastor Matt, because I'm not a pastor, but I don't correct them because I just think it's cool that they know me and they want to say hi to me and their faces light up. And I know that's a huge ego thing, but that's just like you were saying, Mackenzie, about how we are able to just affect people on a different level and talk to them. And it's just the fact that people want to actually say hi to me. I'm still amazed at people that want to interact with me at all.
I think it's so cool that we can especially little kids like preschoolers, maybe they're coming, some of our preschoolers that are in our preschool, they've never really been in a church before. So they come to a church, and the way that they interact with us and their teachers really helps to teach them that church is a safe place where we can have fun and learn about Jesus, but like where something big happens.
Yeah.
And so that's also so cool. And I love hearing the preschoolers try to like retell me a Bible story I've told to them. And of course, they make lots of silly mistakes or take some creative liberties. But you're right. It's just, there's such joy in listening to them talk and them coming up and being excited, oh, I saw this today and it reminded me of, when Jonah was swallowed by the monkey. And I'm like, it wasn't quite a monkey, but we'll roll with it, or when the middle schoolers come up and they're, Miss Mackenzie, I have a question. And, it's just so cool when they come up to you when you know that they feel safe around you. I think that's it. Yeah, it's a big ego boost, but it just makes me so happy and it makes me feel like I'm doing my job, They
That's
feel
exactly, yeah.
comfortable being at church, and that's a good thing.
That was one of the first things I wanted to do when I started ministry 30 years ago, was to establish, because Emmanuel didn't have like a really regular youth ministry until I came, and we were a pretty big congregation. And I thought, well, to make it regular, and then to get the kids, the students, the young people to feel safe and at home and comfortable in the building first. And
Yes.
then we work from there on their spiritual comfort and their social comfort, because if they're not in a place they don't feel comfortable, those other things aren't going to work.
Right.
And you're right. When the little kids know you and they recognize things in the church and they feel so at home there, oh, chef's kiss.
I think it was, you mentioned those preschoolers and making an eternal difference. One of the things that we love seeing at our own congregation is that, the preschoolers getting so excited about Jesus that they bring mom and dad to Jesus, right? They are at church and they're singing and those sort of things, but then they want to get baptized. And so then because they get baptized, mom and dad are coming to church and they're wanting to find out more about church. And so just that whole aspect of the little children speaking the truth and the little children leading their families to Jesus is such a really powerful witness to how God works and some of those small joys, how they can make an eternal difference, right? When you think of joys, you've been doing it for 3 years, Mackenzie. Matt, you've been doing it for a little longer. So this question is more directed at you. So like, how have those joys changed through your tenure, right? Through your time at Emmanuel? Do you look at things differently now or than you did 30 years ago, right? Do you see your ministry different than you did 30 years ago? I'm guessing the answer is yes, because as we age and grow, we're like, oh yeah, I can do this now that I couldn't do when I was young, right? Or and I can see the long-term impact. So tell us about that.
Well, just being able to, well, for example, last night I was teaching confirmation to our public school students, and it hit me that all of our sixth graders, all of our seventh graders, and all of our eighth graders were children of people I had in youth group. And
Wow.
to see that, it changes. I will say it intrinsically changes how I speak to, how I interact with, and how I work with the students I have now.
Mhm.
I wish I would have had that foresight to think about it. I guess it worked, but God is awesome. But to be able to see that there have been generations moving through Emmanuel through the power of the Holy Spirit is very changing for me, especially when I have, like what I did on Tuesday, a very, very difficult bunch of eighth graders. I keep reminding myself, they're not going to be eighth graders forever.
Right.
They're going to, thank goodness they're going to grow up. But just to be able to look generationally down the line and see, like, one of my kids their family just had their fifth child. He has
Yeah.
5 children, and I went on like 3 mission trips with him and was at his confirmation. And it makes me so proud of the work that God is doing in their lives to keep them as active as they are, as a family of 7 coming to church still. It's amazing. It's a blessing.
Yeah, it really gives you, as someone a little bit older as well, who's had a bit of a tenure, it gives you a lot of hope for the future, right?
Very much.
You get to see how God's work is going to continue even after you're done, right? Like even after you are rejoicing in heaven, God's work is still being carried on, and it's incredibly gratifying to see that to know that you had a small part in it, right? That God worked through you. Very humbling, as you said before, Matt, but also just incredibly uplifting.
And it's so encouraging to see people like Mackenzie who are clearly making an impact already in
Yeah.
3 years, and to see, just to imagine what it's going to be like for you, Mackenzie, like later on. And then it's so nice to see that our youth are in such wonderful hands of people who are motivated, trained, and spiritually activated, which is awesome.
Yeah.
All the credit to the Lord and the people he
Absolutely.
sent before to help train me, of course.
Yeah. I mean, God is so good, right?
Very much.
He prepares the way, and he uses people to bless other people, and we get to rejoice in it, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we've been talking about how DCEs uphold the lives of others, and the great joys that you have, but also being in church work, there's some hard things too. So what's the best way for a church to uphold the life of a DCE? A
Oh, that's
church
a good
or
one.
church families?
Um, so again, I'm new to all of this, and I think I'm very blessed in saying that my church is amazing and does a fantastic job of supporting me and encouraging me, both inside and outside of the ministry. And I think some of the things that they do really well, are like first like noticing me as a person before just like a church worker, which I am a church worker, but I'm also a person. And so I'm a person who needs to have relationships outside of work. I'm a person who needs downtime. I'm a person who needs encouragement and validation. And I think that my pastors and my staff and even my families and my congregants and my students are really good at noticing that and like going out of their way to help me feel supported and loved and wanted. Um, and I think that makes a huge difference.
For sure.
I
How about
agree.
you, Matt?
Acknowledgement. I knew in the ministry it was, oh, he has all these kids and he's doing so many things, and sometimes you get into a habit and a pattern, and you're just part of the cogs that work in the church, and every now and then just being able to make sure that their congregation knows that youth ministry is still present, youth ministry is still active, youth ministry is still important, is exceptionally a good thing. And you're getting us both, a week or so after Easter. So big, deep breaths
Yeah.
of acknowledgement of all the stuff that the pastors and every church worker does. But sometimes the congregation might not understand how hard we work also during those seasons as well. So a little bit of acknowledgement for the stuff that we do. And again, my congregation is great at that as well. But I do talk to a lot of other youth people in the area, and sometimes churches, and I think it all stems back from they don't know what we do. And
Mhm.
so if they don't know what we do, they can't acknowledge what we're doing. And if we are better and more intentional at making sure our congregations know what we're doing and how we're doing it and who we're doing it with, then there probably will be a better, at least communication happening and acknowledgement. So yeah, no, yeah, just knowing that we are here and present. That's especially as a single guy, that's important with no
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's switch to our last two questions. And these are the same questions I've been asking everyone on our vocation series. One of them is about life issues. So when you think about your work with youth and in some cases older youth, right, in college, and I know Mackenzie, you're working with some families. What one life issue do you think we should be keeping an eye on? Because maybe it's affecting young people in ways that are different now, or you see that it's more prevalent. If you could encourage us to research or to look for one life issue, what would it be?
Oof. Uh, Time spent with family. I think, I don't know, our society and our culture has become such, for lack of a better way of saying it, competitive,
Hmm.
that families tend to think that if they're not busy all the time and if their student isn't in everything, then they're not keeping up with the others. And I think that breaks down a lot of what happens in the life of a family, not just the life of a congregation, but the life of a family. If you're constantly traveling to different things and you're so involved in a variety of activities or sports or whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is, then your family is being sacrificed. And I think I would like families to realize that taking time to be together is crucial. It's so important. Eat together. Gosh, there are studies plenty that talk about the differences in successful, if you want to call it that, families, and how that's linked to actually eating together, simply eating a meal together, and that seems so minor. But I mean, even from my high school days, I remember eating on the kitchen counter with nobody else at home, so but eating together as a family, allowing for communication, allowing for them to like just bond, I think is really important to the life of a family.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
when
I
we
agree.
talk about families, families are the foundation for society. They are the gift that God gives pre-fall when he gives Adam and Eve to each other, right? Family is good inherently,
Yeah.
and it is necessary to uphold life. Yeah, I think that's very wise, and I would agree as a former teacher, but also someone who works in the field of life. Um, the family breakdown, the opportunity for kids to be with parents is really important, parents and siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think just this busyness that our kids have is, I mean, I can't say unlike anything before because I don't really know anything else. That's all I've ever known also is the busyness. But when you think about how like our students today are um struggling with mental health, if there's no time that they have with you to talk to you about it, like how are you going to know and how can you help? And also, I mean, I think research also shows that students are more likely to be connected to church and to stay connected to church when their families express their faith at home. So you guys going to church as a family together is very important, but also praying together at home, talking about faith together at home. Those things are so, so important, and can help prepare your student to better handle the challenges that life throws their way, rooted in, the hope and promises of God, because of the way that you equipped them as a family. So yeah, just yeah, busyness is insane, and it's so important to take a second and just be a family.
Yeah.
Yeah, be able to see that, and not to interrupt, I'm sorry, Michelle. I
No, go for it.
started thinking about that when I started doing ministry. The one thing I said was make it regular. And so we had seventh grade after school till 6 on Mondays, eighth grade after school till 6 on Tuesdays, and high school after school on Wednesdays until 7. And it was called open youth room, meaning they can come here, they can just hang out, they can chill, we can have a devotion, whatever. And what I've noticed with a paradigm shift in the last probably 15 years is that they no longer come to the youth room and just find their own things to do. Now it's, what are we going to do? What do you have planned for us? What are we going to schedule? How long is it going to be till we do this? Because their brains have been trained to be told what to do instead of just being able to. I always say, if you're bored in our youth room, then I have to question what I can do for you at all, because we have everything. So, and it's been a big shift. And I think that's because we've kept them so busy. We've trained them to always be told what to do instead of come up with what to do.
Mhm.
Sure. It's interesting. It's an interesting take because certainly I think a lot of church workers have seen the transition away from family time, right? Um, but I think, Matt, you bring up an interesting point too, and we've seen, I don't know, essays, speakers in society about critical thinking, about creativity, about free time, about the need to be bored, right?
Yes.
And that's no one's brought that up on the podcast yet, but I think you're right. That is something that we could consider and should consider. Um, is is boredom good, right? Is it exploration good? Is it also life affirming? Can we benefit from this? And I think you're right. We can. especially as we're growing adults, right? It's not just children, but children who will become adults one day and will need to think for themselves and be creative and solve problems and those sorts of things. So it's
Definitely.
interesting. How about the last question, which is if for our listeners, you could recommend one book or podcast uh, on your work as a DCE or on what a Lutheran home looks like or how to help raise children in the faith, what would you recommend?
Oh, I saw that question and I was like, oh no. I I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, but that the
Not
really
not the best.
I know the only specific Lutheran podcast or Christian podcast that I listen to, well, I used to, I haven't for a while. I hope it's still around, is called Pint Glass Preachers. And it's two pastors and a Lutheran school principal that get together. They introduce the beverage that they're drinking, and then they talk about a hot topic. It could be anything from that family boredom time to any kind of life issues to any kind of theological discussion. And they just kind of banter back and forth, getting through the roots of scripture and through what our theology teaches you on specific topics. I find that one to be really interesting. It's gotten me through lots of long runs.
Sure, yeah. How about you, Mackenzie?
Yeah, I was telling you, Michelle, right before the podcast that I have been looking into a lot of the research that the Lutheran Hour Ministries has done with Barna about spiritually vibrant households. And they've put out a lot of good material on, they did a lot of research about what it means to be a spiritually vibrant households, and they came up with three things that all spiritually vibrant households have. It's that they pray together, they talk about God together, and they are hospitable. And so I've been doing a lot of research on that and looking at different ways to incorporate that into our programming and encourage families to do those three things together. And it's been a lot of fun, and I think our families are really enjoying it. So that's what I would recommend. They have some info on their website, and they also have some resources you can purchase about that research that they've done.
Yeah, it's a great research, great option for people to delve in. And I know you sent me the link, so we can put that link on the bottom of our podcast. What about if people have questions for you? If someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, I think I might want to be a DCE, but I'd like to ask more questions. How
Mhm.
could someone reach you to ask those questions? And would you be open to it?
Of course, yeah. I don't know, could we just put our emails
Absolutely.
in the podcast also?
Yep. Yep. You'll
Yes.
have to tell me which one you'd like to have included.
Yeah.
But definitely, if that's the best way. How about you, Matt? Is it the best way to reach out via email or social media, or what would be best for you?
Email, social media, whatever is most convenient. I mean, you know that, Mackenzie, that people talk to us in like seven different
They
venues,
do.
constantly checking our communication methods.
Yes.
Any of them would be fine. Probably more direct would be one of the social media contacts, but emails, it's good too. I try to make sure I get back within 48 hours to any email, and you can put either one down there if you want. That's fine. I would love that. Oh my gosh, that got me excited just to think about anyone to go. I got several students going to Concordia now, and I'm very excited
Me
about it.
too.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's just to be able to, yeah, we are massive proponents of youth ministry. So yes,
Yes,
please, we are the recruiters.
we are. I think
Excellent.
I have I have one student there right now. I have two more going next year, and I probably have three going the year after that. I think it's a little far out to predict that, but I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
that's so
So
awesome.
I told them I want to start getting commissions.
When you guys say Concordia, you're speaking of your alma maters, correct?
Yeah,
Well,
Chicago.
yeah,
Yeah.
just said the Concordia, please, come on.
Yeah.
The original
So
Concordia.
just to stand for the other Concordias. So yeah,
They're
it is
all great.
they're all wonderful,
They
yes. And
are.
as a graduate of Concordia, Nebraska, I can say that their programs are wonderful too. But
And one of my students is the one of the pastors at Concordia, the academy that's at Concordia,
oh
Nebraska.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. That they
so that
started.
I hear more about that now. The Andrews
Yeah,
there, so cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's Mackenzie, I'll have to introduce you to him. He's a great guy. He's one of my
Sure,
former
love that.
students and one of Matt's former youth. So yeah, just they've got a high school startup there.
Wow,
That's
cool.
really interesting. So, but that's not to leave out the other Concordias. So for anyone listening, Concordia, Wisconsin, Concordia, St. Paul, Concordia, Irvine, who am I missing?
Yeah, don't forget any.
Yeah, I know.
You did.
Yeah,
I think
Wisconsin,
that's it.
Irvine, St. Paul,
I think we got them.
Nebraska,
Of course.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's
Okay. Okay. So they're all good. Go to a Concordia.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much, Mackenzie and Matt, for joining me for this edition of the Youth for Life podcast. And we will definitely put your contact information below. I hope people do reach out to you. You guys would be wonderful mentors for them. And thanks for joining me to talk about vocation and how God upholds lives in many and various ways and through many vocations. So thanks for joining us. And for those of you who are listening, thanks again for joining us for the podcast. We'd love it if you could like and share the podcast with others. Have a great week, and God bless your work for life this week in the Lord.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for today's life topic. Check out yforlife.org or email Michelle at yforlife.org to find out how and when you can go live with us at our next Chats for Life session. Or join us next time, right here at Y for Life Podcasts, where youth learn how to be gospel-motivated voices for life.